Hey, welcome to today's Ground Level Wednesday Wisdom. My name's Nathan and I'm a pastor at Icon Church.
My name's Dave, also a pastor at Icon Church.
My name's Paul, the lead pastor at Icon Church.
And today we're going to be exploring digital discipleship. And we've called it Exploring Digital Discipleship because we've all been exploring digital discipleship over this past season.
Yeah.
I guess to start with, we kind of answer the question, what is discipleship and why is it important?
Yeah. Well, I mean, simply said, I think discipleship is formation into the likeness of Jesus, growing people to become more like Jesus. And we could also say it's being apprenticed in the way of following Jesus as well. And that the gospel actually births us into this new kingdom, that it restores these four relationships. I believe the gospel is not just about our relationship with God, which it is, but also our relationship with ourselves, relationship with others, and our relationship with the world. And so it's being formed into the likeness of Jesus in the context of those four relationships.
So let's try and explore that a little bit. What do we think? How does that happen, actually? You know, how are people formed into the likeness of Jesus?
Yeah, well, I think that's the process, isn't it, of being a disciple, and the best word we have, disciples, we've not got is not a great word for what that is, and that's part, I guess, of the challenge of understanding discipleship. The best word we've got is an apprentice, where someone is taught by somebody else. That's apprenticing, where somebody who knows how to, conduct themselves or do something in a particular area, teaches somebody else, watches them as they make mistakes and develop and grow. And so that whole process, that journey of ongoing development happens through people connecting together.
I guess an important thing to recognize with that as well, in terms of somebody following somebody else, or, Paul said, follow me as I follow Christ. But we talk about those four relationships, God, others, self, and the world, that we can be discipled by multiple people in different areas. Would you agree with that?
For different things, definitely. I think it's good to pick up on that. And even when it comes to coaching or discipleship, people will often say, well, I'll have a coach for this area of my life, one aspect, and another area. And I think that's true to say that it's good to think, well, you just don't need one person to disciple you. You need a mixture of people, don't you?
Yeah, it's
to
very
really
good.
help you along. And
personally, I found that there's been seasons as well, or periods of my life where someone has had a huge influence, sort of, let's say, the main influence in my life. I mean, for me, when I first became a Christian, that was my pastor in my local church. And for, however many years, at least 10, 12 years, his influence and his example and his training was the main influence. But then as life moves on, other people, roles shift, and people, you are discipled by different people in different areas. Yeah.
Okay, so is there a lack of discipleship in the church today?
Yeah, well, I think we would say yes, but we'd also say there is discipleship happening.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things, obviously, we don't want to talk too much about the pandemic because I think that's a bad thing to talk too much about it. But one of the things that did highlight was almost this sense of panic in the church that, if Christians are just consuming our content, if they're just showing up because they like our music, they like our services, they like the community, if they're just consuming what's on offer, then they're not going to last and they're not going to go forward. But if they're disciples of Jesus, and we've made disciples of Jesus, and also that happens not through people, through the interaction, then they'll last. Whatever happens, just like the church has for 2,000 years. And so there was this panic. Where's the level of our discipleship at in that? And I think also, if we're saying yes, there is a lack of discipleship, I would say in some of those areas we mentioned too, I think we've got strong discipleship ideas about how do we disciple somebody in their relationship with God. You attend church, you worship, you read your Bible, you pray, you get in a small group. That often is very Godward. But have we got any systems, any ways that we disciple people in their relationship with one another and their relationship with themselves and their relationship with their world? Maybe we're weak in some of those areas.
I mean, it's good just to think through this idea that actually people did panic a little bit, didn't they?
Yeah.
To see, had discipleship gone down, were people going to turn up? But I think on the whole, what we've experienced is actually people have turned up, and they have been more than consumers. I think maybe in some cultures, that idea of being a consumer is much more real than maybe in the UK. I think our experience, certainly at Icon Church, and maybe other churches found the same, that people have turned up, by and large, haven't they?
Stayed connected.
Yeah. Stayed connected. They stayed, even if we say they've stayed giving, they've stayed part of all that, where, even all that stuff people were panicking about, weren't they, from giving right through. But I think one of the things that has highlighted, actually, there is a level of commitment to the cause. People are connected to Jesus, therefore, I think they're going to turn up more than what they would if it was some other cause. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think you were mentioning those, those areas and those 4 areas that we've kind of highlighted, God, others, self, and the world. And I think, even just throughout the past year, we've seen that, maybe we've been good at discipling people towards God, but you've seen in instances in culture, but in people's lives, the lack of discipleship towards others, towards self, and towards the world, and those things. So we're talking digital discipleship, which really is like online, Zoom meetings,
on your phone,
however you want, messaging, all of that.
Social media.
Yeah. So here's a question. Is digital discipleship real discipleship?
No, I think it's a big discussion, that, isn't it? I think aspects of it are real.
Yes.
Personally, I think a lot of it you can do a lot of training, I think, online, and you can learn a lot, but you're still missing the human touch, aren't you, really?
Yeah.
And you need the human touch for discipleship. Not just the divine touch, of course it is that as well, but there's something about this interaction. So is it real? It is real. Is it working? It is working. But what would you choose if you had an option?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's a good question, that, isn't
it? As I was thinking about this, I was thinking, well, how did Jesus disciple people? And I think there's some things you can do online. Yeah. And then there's some things you need that life on life. Yeah. And so I was thinking, well, Jesus taught the disciples, and that's how we disciple people, don't we? We gather together, we open the scriptures, and hopefully we're preaching messages that are relevant to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, not just to Sunday. Yeah. And so that's discipleship. Here's how to live. Here's how to respond. And you can do that. You can do that online. You can have that communication. You can have that understanding online. But then when you watch the life of Jesus, discipleship happened as they asked questions. Well, what did you mean about that? Now, we don't do as much of that online. Now, you can do that online. You were sharing one example of that this morning. Even.
Yeah, so like we were just doing like the YouVersion Bible app. We're not sponsored by them, by the way, but I think
we're happy to be if they come to us.
If you're listening to this, Craig
Pastor Craig, get in touch.
Get in touch. But like we were doing, and on there, you have this moment after each day where you can put comments, and we had one of our young leaders, we were just going through a Bible reading plan, who would just ask questions after that, and we'd send back the answers. And rather than us having to meet and do that, it was a simple way of that being accessible. And I think it's important to recognize this with one of our young leaders, that future generations, online is real life. And this is how they're interacting with each other. So they're, like you, as leaders, you might be in 20 WhatsApp groups. Well, most young people are probably in about 60 WhatsApp groups. Plus, then they've got their Facebook messaging groups. They're in these groups, and all the time they're messaging. And I think if we can get the mix right, I think we're right in the fact of there is moments where it needs the human touch. But what a great opportunity to be able to be in somebody's life like every day,
Yeah.
even if it's just one message,
Yeah.
every day we get to have that touch with somebody.
Yeah, and we'll come back to that, the amount people are online, but again, going back to Jesus, so there's obviously the teaching, which we can do online. There's the questions, which I think there's the questions and the interaction of what does that mean, which I think doesn't happen a lot, but if we could, more of that would help our digital discipleship. But then there's the filter of an example, and this is the bit that the disciples were able to watch how Jesus applied his own teaching. And they were able to understand the teaching of Jesus because they saw that personal and they had that interaction. And in that interaction, there was encouragement. He sends out, let's say, he sends out the 72. You go and do what I've done. You can do it. There's that encouragement. And we'll talk about it when you come back.
Yeah,
and
good feedback model as well.
Yeah,
Isn't it?
brilliant feedback. But then there's the rebukes. Peter, I don't want you to think like this. Get behind me, Satan.
Yeah.
That's not the way to think about this.
It's hard to do
Could
that.
you
online.
imagine receiving that in a text message?
WhatsApp, if you want. Well, we've had to close down some WhatsApp groups because they were doing some stuff. But yeah, so there's a lot, I think, in terms of people's discipleship journey, and that's the thing to understand. Discipleship is a journey. So you can move people online towards Christ and towards following
I agree with
Jesus.
that, yeah, definitely.
But then I think if I was to frame it, the thing that people need is a physical, incarnational example that they can follow. You quoted Paul, follow me as I follow Christ. He's saying, I'm trying to follow Jesus and I think in this way, I'm acting this way, I'm responding this way. And we need that. And we also need that through imperfect humans. I know in my life, there have been so many people that I've rubbed shoulders with and come close to. And I've actually thought they think about that differently to me. And that's been a challenge and helped me grow. So yeah, I think a little bit of a mix.
And some real pros, isn't there, with digital discipleship? I mean, if we think of some of the pros that are there, it's easily accessible. People can connect, any time of the day. Wider audience catchment. You can reach people. Disciple people across the world where they had to be. So there is pros there. I mean, there's quite a few others we have there on a list. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Chip into that.
Yeah, I mean, it's there accessible. I was just even thinking, small groups have become more accessible for people who've got families.
Yeah.
So usually somebody would, one parent might stay at home with the kids, putting them to bed, whereas the other might go to connect, and they might alternate that. We see that in our church. People would alternate. You can go this week, you go next week, whereas it's online. Yeah, they're just putting the kids to bed. There'll be 10 minutes, and then they're in the small group, and so there's that that kind of like easily accessible. It's there for them.
So more touch points in one sense, isn't it?
Yeah.
As you said earlier, because like if you can get stuff out to people once a day, and people, I suppose it's the engagement of that, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it does give us that more touch points with people.
Yeah.
So there is real benefits, I think, in the digital world. It's not going anywhere. It's here to stay, isn't it, really?
Yeah. I had a statistic actually just this last week that people are reading 27 minutes of content per day on Instagram.
Wow.
Yeah.
27 minutes just on Instagram. And they're reading 11 minutes of content from everywhere else.
Wow. 27 on
27
Instagram.
on Instagram, 11 from books, newspapers, anywhere else. And that's person. So people are being discipled online. And actually, the online environment is geared to disciple people. So, how many adverts do you see a day?
Yeah.
It's true. And that's people discipling us in consumerism and chasing commodities. And so somebody is wanting to shape us into the image of consumers.
Yeah.
I mean, lots of people, not just somebody, a one person. But actually, I think it's a tool that we have got to use even better than we've learned to shape people into the image of Jesus.
You've asked actually, or you said a phrase, or you've asked the question of our church, are we being discipled by the world, or are we being discipled by Jesus?
Great question.
I think this is really important to recognize in digital discipleship, because it's very easy to be discipled by the world rather than by Jesus.
Yeah.
You can say like who you listen to most is who you'll become like, or your thoughts will become like that. And 27 minutes worth of content read on Instagram, that's who you're listening to most.
The loudest voice.
Yeah. And I think, even just talking to the people who are listening, maybe it's a question we have to ask ourselves. I know I have to ask myself, who am I being discipled by? Is it the world? Or am I being intentional about who I'm being discipled by, who I'm listening to, who are the voices that are speaking into my life? I think firstly, it's a good place to start in myself, but then also helping our churches and helping them realize that, yes, social media is here to stay. It's going to be around. Online is going to be here to stay. But let's use it wisely. I think is a discipleship moment in itself of, you could get discipled by the world. Who are you listening to? What are those voices?
And I think understanding this is the starting place. So you've got to understand that stuff that we're consuming as we scroll our screens is shaping us. It's discipling us. Deliberately, in many cases. But then also the algorithms. So when you like a series of things, the algorithms behind all of that technology are going to show you more of what you like and more of what you love. So eventually you're just talking to yourself.
I'll say it's interesting because this has just come to my head, because I say to some of our young people and some of our young adults, I'll say you need to get around people who are not just going to tell you what you want to hear, they're going to tell you what you need to hear. Social media is just going to tell you what you want to hear, and it's going to point you to that all the time.
But again, we can harness that in one sense, because if we've got, if our people in our setting, they're online and they're watching the right stuff, then those algorithms, whether we like it or not, are going to push similar content their way. So it can work to our advantage. And I suppose, coming back to that idea, how do we harness that as followers of Jesus? What do we do to harness it? Because it's not going anywhere, so we've got to do something with it. We can't ignore it. We've got to somehow harness and use what's out there. Because I think Jesus would have done the same, wouldn't he? Really?
He would, and I think one of the things we've got to help people understand is Jesus is not always going to agree with you. Discipleship often is the reforming or the reshaping, and he's going to change your mindset. He's going to change how you think about things. And if you're not being challenged and transformed and changed, you're probably not being discipled by Jesus.
I like that.
You're actually being discipled by the people you agree with. And you're just getting more sucked into that. So when push comes to shove, you'll make choices based on that discipleship, not the following of Jesus. And so we need people to understand that actually that conflict, it's not really conflict, it's a shifting perspective and mindset is actually shaping us into the image of Christ.
I mean, I like the idea we've talked about in a different context. This sort of discipleship is rubbing against one another and rubbing off on each other. And I think you need that in real life, because you need the online stuff, but you need to connect with people so that actually they can rub you up the wrong way, because that's when your discipleship becomes real. If someone triggers you, that's when patience comes in. Well, you don't need patience if you're on your own watching. You know what I mean? You need real life people who are going to trigger you sometimes. Not that that's an invitation to do that, by the way. But, you know what I mean? You need people in your face a little bit. So there is that rubbing. And there is that building together as well. So there's space for it.
And I think we found some things have been successful for us as Icon Church. If I just highlight a few things for like Alpha Course, online has been a huge success for us in the fact of, like when I say to someone, hey, there's a 12-week course you can do about exploring Christianity. It's like 12 weeks, like that's like 3 months. But actually online, we've seen the retention rate on that really high. And people
probably higher
connect
than
with
in
it.
the room, actually.
A lot higher than in the room. And so that's been a success. Our small groups, they've grown. Attendance has grown in that. People connecting with that. I just thinking even of our leadership meetings. They've become more accessible for people and able to do that. And I'd encourage people, don't just like have a look how to run an online meeting. Because don't just try it. But do that. So we've had some successes, but also there are challenges behind it. You mentioned like, rubbing up against each other. Well, if you rub me up the wrong way on a Zoom, I'm going to leave meeting or I'm just going to turn my camera off.
I'll snooze you for, I'll snooze you for 30 days or whatever it is.
I'll put it on mute or something, close down the video. I mean, there is some challenges with digital discipleship. We've got to be real with that as well. Like, and just coming to that, like people, I suppose, can hide behind a screen. It's easy, isn't it? Like if someone's talking about an issue and somebody on the other side doesn't like it, it's they can just switch off the screen or hide behind there. Where it's harder to do that in a group setting. So there is challenges there really. And what are the other challenges we think there is?
Well, we got the verse, the laying on of hands.
It's hard
we're
to
not
do
able
that.
to do that. That pastoral aspect of it, being able to do that.
Although on Sunday we had a healing.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic.
So on Sunday at the end of the service, we felt to pray for people, and we just said lay hands on yourself, obviously, or if there's somebody with you who's in your bubble, get them to lay hands on you. And we had a wife laid hands on her husband, and her husband's suffering from arthritis, and for over a year hadn't been able to clench his fist. And then we got a message Sunday afternoon that his hand had been healed, and then he sent me an email and a photograph of him clenching his fist on Monday morning. So I think the issue is to think about what are the elements of discipleship, like we've talked. What the elements of discipleship? What can you do online, and what can you not fully do online? What are the bits that you actually need the physical, the interaction with people, situation?
So in your message because you spoke on Sunday, in your message you said, you framed it. If you're in a bubble, get somebody to lay hands, and you kind of alluded to the whole thing. We miss this. But it's also a moment to be creative and to equip the people, equip the church to hey, it's not just down to the pastor or the leader. No, you're in your home. This can happen.
If you're on your own, lay hands on yourself.
Exactly.
I think there is a lot of physicality about our faith. Jesus didn't wait till the Zoom technology was in to come. He came physically in the incarnation. We take bread and wine as physical elements, which we won't get into all the theology of that, but for me, the physicality of that.
You looked at me when you said that.
No, I didn't think you were going to go for it, but I do think there's the physicality of that, the laying on of hands. There's another verse: greet one another with a holy kiss. We tend to miss out the kiss, but we hug people, don't we? And we in Christian community, if that puts you off, then we don't.
Don't worry, we'll do a high five.
We'll do high fives,
fist bumps.
Yeah, we start with high fives, fist bumps, elbows, but there's a lot of physicality around our faith because we're wired that way, and I think. So here's something I read. And I understand that a baby just a small child, human baby, can actually tell the difference if it sees a parent on a screen or a parent in person. Even without the physical touch in person, it knows if the parent is in the room, and that matters more. So there are elements where we need that physicality. However, I'm quite positive about the fact of what we can do digitally.
I think you're true. Yeah.
And I think we just need to think through a little bit more, like the discussion, like the comments. I think there's that, like the challenge. Where can we have robust conversation? You know, some of the stuff that perhaps doesn't happen as much online that's involved in discipleship. Are there ways that we can? That's why we're exploring, because we're just asking the questions, aren't we, like everyone else?
Yeah, definitely. And I think there is something powerful about the genius of the and. You know, like you mentioned something there, just picking up on that idea of the gaps.
Yeah.
So there is some things that digital discipleship will miss. But equally, there's a lot we can gain.
Yes.
So I think, obviously, as we're exploring this idea of digital discipleship, there's space, isn't there, for both? And I don't know, I think it would be a big struggle to not use digital discipleship, because that's the way we're going.
Yeah,
you know? So
definitely.
There's got to be something there where we recognise the gaps, and people recognise the gaps, but just because there's gaps doesn't mean you shouldn't use it.
No.
And I think if people aren't careful, they'll say, well, it's missing this, it's missing that, therefore it's not real.
Yeah, dismiss it.
And dismiss it. And maybe that's just a bad way to look at it.
Well, Nathan, you mentioned Alpha, but obviously we're exploring for the later in the year. What else can we do online that actually could work at least as well or even better than in the room? Things like the marriage course, you know, things like courses on the Holy Spirit and baptism in the Spirit, where the access, people don't have to travel. So, you know, you've took out 20, 30 minutes of travel minimum for people, maybe an hour's travel.
And that's locally, but you've got to think also globally.
Yes.
People would be connecting in, couldn't they?
Yeah.
So we're thinking through, are there other things that we could try and explore? Does that work digitally to move people towards Christ, to move people further along? And then the other thing, I think this is the big win, is the foyer of the church has moved.
Yeah,
I agree. Yeah.
So, if I was to look back at the last 15 years of our church, I would say the foyer of our church was our website 15 years ago. Then it became our podcast. People were listening. Then it became our YouTube channel. That was the foyer. This is for people locally. And at the same time, we built a huge, in our building in Chesterfield, we had a huge physical foyer. Because we wanted people to have pre- and post-service buzz. But the foyer now has just moved right out into the community, into the world. So we find people like connecting with us, watching with us. You know, we had one couple watched our services for 6 weeks before they even thought about showing up at our building. And so that our foyer is right out there now. So our reach, our potential reach to start a relationship with people and then start to move them towards Christ has only increased.
It's got better. And just thinking of that story, I mean, there was another story of our campus in Stocksbridge. Somebody was going past the building, seen the sign, and then went online. So, I mean, I think they would have went online even if we had had physical services at that point in time.
Definitely.
They would.
I think it would have went on, had a look, explored. They're doing all the exploring online before they even get to the building. And that's a win for the church. It really is.
Yeah, and that
I think
person
it's brilliant. And
came to the service on the Sunday online. And then joined Alpha straight away on the Monday. And this Sunday, after this recording, we'll actually physically for the first time
the church
be in the building.
And like, just to kind of wrap it up and wrap up the story as well, they were 3 weeks late on Alpha, but because of online, one of our great people on the Alpha team spent time with them online. So they didn't have to physically travel. You go to we'll do it online, and caught them up so they were in that place. And so, like we've said, digital discipleship is here to stay. I think we've also said there has to be some element of personal connection. And I don't think it's either or. I think the future is and. And I think for any church leader out there, it's, like us, we're exploring what is online and what is in person. What's better online and what's better in person. And that might mean, hey, we're just going to try something. We're going to try, we just tried the Alpha course online. We're just going to try something online to do that. Any final thoughts, comments before we finish?
No, I think we're exploring digital discipleship, and I think we're going to uncover some things that we can do better to move people towards becoming more like Christ, and some things online that we can do better, and some things will be a hybrid, as well.
Yeah, no, that's where that was on my mind there. That this idea that it's going to be a hybrid, and we've got to be willing to accept that. Not be frightened of that hybrid model. It's there to stay, and I think people have just got to embrace it. That would be my take on it.
Great. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this Ground Level Wednesday wisdom and this conversation on exploring digital discipleship. If you do have any questions, please feel free to send them into the office, and hopefully maybe we'll be able to answer them, or maybe they're questions we've not even asked ourselves. But thanks for listening, and we hope to see you real soon.